I think I know something about Steve that you don't know.
Uh-oh. What is it?
Is it true, Steve, that you were recruited by the CIA?
Yes, it was. Out of University of Arizona. Vladimir Sakharov was a Soviet defector that taught a class of mine, and I was recruited among 4 other people to go to potentially career training, they called it back then.
And how do we know you're not actually working for the CIA right now?
No, I'm definitely not.
Did you know that, Rick?
I did not.
You've known him for 30 plus years.
He probably told me that at some point, actually. But yeah, it feels new today.
Rarely bring it up.
Great thing about getting
Didn't
older.
do it.
You can have the same conversation over and over, and it's just as interesting as you get older. Yeah.
Well, we do have an interesting person. Should we get started, Rick?
Let's do it. Here we go.
Risk. The final frontier. These are the stories of the Axon enterprise. Our mission to protect life, to seek amazing people, and live epic tales. Come, let us boldly go.
All right. Well, speaking of amazing people, we've got one here today.
Yep.
The one and only Steve Tuttle.
Yep. And Steve, welcome to the Boldly Go podcast, episode number 4. This is a podcast where public safety meets bold leadership. AI collides with the real world, and the future just isn't coming. It's accelerating. So as you know, this is inspired by Star Trek's fearless spirit. You can hear it in our our video here. We chart the frontier forces shaping and reshaping public safety technology and society. As we mentioned today on this episode, we're excited to welcome Steve Tuttle. He is one of the original 5 founding team members of TASER International, as we'll talk about, which became Axon. In his first 25 years at the company, Steve led government affairs, eventually communications, serving as the primary spokesperson for the company when, as you heard from episode 1, it was and you'll hear throughout this episode, it was in the crosshairs of many controversies. And like our opening says, Steve has some epic tales. Steve now holds the title at Axon as Distinguished TASER Fellow. Now, when you got that title, there was only one other person that had distinguished in their title. You know who that is, Rick?
Max Nerheim.
Max Nerheim. So, Steve, you're only second person in the entire company to have the title Distinguished TASER Fellow. And he works quietly behind the scenes with working on strategic relationships, working with our legal team, our training team, and focusing on all things TASER. 2 interesting facts about Steve as we get started. 1, he serves as the company historian. I'm sure he's going to tell us a little bit about that. And 2, I think he might be the only person at Axon that has their own Slack channel. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It isn't like Ask Steve or...
No, it's the Ask Tuttle channel or something like that. It's the Tuttle retention file. It's the only one you can keep open without losing its history. It stays forever.
Rick doesn't even have his own Slack channel. Tuttle does. So let's get started. Let's jump into it.
All right. Well, before we get to Steve, I actually Steve found for me something special from the archives. So I think I mentioned back in episode 1 that when I first met Jack Cover and I went down to visit him at his house in Tucson, one of the things he showed me that just captured my imagination was a video of the TASER Buffalo gun. You remember the TASER Buffalo gun, Steve?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, it actually became famous part of TASER lore.
There's a good history behind that as well.
Yeah. A little bit of history. What do they call it back in the day when you got hit with a TASER, Steve?
If you got hit with the TASER itself back then, it was like riding this incredible ride, and it was coined the Buffalo ride. And that has been on every challenge coin, taking the 5-second ride as the Buffalo ride. And then you flip onto the corner, you'll either have the weapon on there or a saying, but it will have a buffalo on there, which explains why there's a buffalo on there.
I have that tattoo on my leg, the buffalo with the number 5.
You know, the thing is, the lawyers at one point made us stop doing that when TASER became controversial. So there was a few years where the buffalo went into hibernation. But Steve helped me find the original buffalo video. So let me pull it up here. So this is from the Jack Cover archives.
Bottom belly. Okay, now up, now down.
Now you can see just like a remote control.
Up, down.
Wow.
Okay,
Got it.
Good.
And in the
Got
dark
it.
days, when we were dealing with TASER failures, I would go back to this and say, wait a minute, this can work. There's no way that buffalo was just feeling pain.
That's awesome.
That buffalo, it was incapacitated
And then it hops right back up.
and it hops right back up, fully recovered. I mean, it's like, that's probably the best example of how TASER is like a light switch that you can just go right from the effect is on and then it's off. And then I also found this one in my archives. This is Jack Cover's original garage in Tucson. So this is where we started. That's Jack on the right there. A couple little bits of history. You see that thing that looks like an easy bake oven. That was indeed an oven where we would use it to cure epoxies and things. If you look down on the floor, you see that thing looks like a scuba tank. That was a high pressure nitrogen cylinder. And when we would pressurize gas cylinders, we made a little pressure chamber. Frankly, it looked like a pipe bomb, and we'd bought it with pipes from Home Depot. And we actually didn't know if the pressure rating would survive. So there's a risk at any point that pipe bomb would explode from the gas pressure. And so when we used to pressurize gas capsules, we'd hook that pipe bomb up to that pressure tank. And then before we'd pressurize it, we would stick it into a trash can full of water and then put it behind a masonry wall. In Arizona, a lot of times, where they put your garbage cans outside your house, there's typically like a masonry wall there. And so we'd stick everything on the other side of the wall, and we'd hunker down, and we'd turn the valve, pressure it up, wait to hear if it exploded. Then we'd wait for a few minutes to let it pressurize the cylinders. In some cases, we'd have to wait 5 minutes for some epoxy to cure in a valve, or various experiments we were doing. And nothing ever exploded on us. But if it did, we at least would have had that masonry wall.
On the buffalo, what is Jack shooting the buffalo with?
Well, I tried to find it. There was a big silver buffalo gun. I think we might have donated it to the Smithsonian. I'm not sure because I couldn't find it in my stuff.
I sent a ton there, so I'm not sure if that was part of it either.
So it looks like a big shotgun or rifle.
It was a big futuristic boxy rifle thing.
Clunky.
Yeah, it was definitely homemade. But in like 96, 97, when we started experiencing that the early generations of the TASER were failing to stop people, I would go back to that video and go, I know this can work. We've seen the buffalo gun work. Maybe we just need to tune up the power. And so that kind of kept hope alive. Anyway, so that was late 93 when we were doing the work in Jack's garage, making the first prototypes to send off to Washington, D.C. to get the approval from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And that came back pretty quick, within a couple months of us starting. And then, Steve, I think do you remember the exact order in which you came in?
So you had me coming out in February, and we were going to Fleischman Hillard, which was at the time a top 3, top 5 PR firm in the world. And we were working with Doug Dowie and Jeff Monacle and Malcolm Sherman. And I would fly out in a red eye. I'd fake a cough on Thursday and Wednesday at work because I'd never called in sick in my life in DC. I'd worked there for almost 8.5 years. And I'd fake a cough, and you would pay for my ticket to fly out red eye. You'd pick me up at LAX, and we'd go work at Fleischman Hillard. And that's how it started in February. And then one of my first projects when I moved to Scottsdale was to send that letter to Ed Owen, that first ATF letter. And I told you it might take months, because I'd done stuff on Senator Gorton's office in Capitol Hill when I was a staffer there. And I thought it would take 4 or 6 months. And I think we got it in something like 4 weeks.
It was days.
3 yeah, it was really quick. It was shocking how quickly it was turned around.
So you were in DC working, doing what?
I was working at that time for Naval Sea Systems Command as a military contractor, doing foreign military sales for the Mark 46 lightweight torpedo.
Wow.
And the reason we grabbed Tuttle was the early TASER from the 70s. The thing that killed it was that it was classified as a firearm. And because of that, it was not only classified as a firearm, but as a sawed-off shotgun or short barrel rifle, which effectively put them out of business. And so this go around, we wanted to make sure that we didn't get shut down by the government. And so having a guy that was going to be our, what was it, Director of Government Affairs, Steve, that we brought you in as?
Correct.
Yeah. So Steve was one of our first hires.
And what did you think when these guys contacted you? I mean, you had a good job, I assume, working in DC. You had a life.
I did. In fact, I was somewhat commuting back and forth between Pentagon City and the embassy in Tokyo. And that was a good gig. It was stressful, but I wanted to get back home to Phoenix. That was my hometown. I couldn't afford a house in DC unless you commute the hour, and that's not worth living in DC. So when I got the phone call, it was from Rick, and we talked on the phone. Now, keep in mind, I've been mugged at gunpoint.
And you've never met Rick before in your life.
Never met him before at all. Now, a friend of mine from high school and grade school had put my resume into Ann Schaller, and she used to work with Phil, your dad, and that's how my name got circulated in the resume. And he called me up one day, and this is back in the day of voice machines. Came home one day from work, and there was a call, so I called him back, and we talked for about an hour. And then he said, I'm going to send you some information. So you sent me a video of you sitting down at a desk talking about what the air taser would do and how it worked. And that appealed to me because I've been mugged at gunpoint 3 times in 3 months living on Capitol Hill when it was the murder capital of America. So that kind of hit me like that would be a good, honorable thing for me to do because I had no protection at that time. It fit my career of working with weapons because I did some stuff with the Armed Services Committee and Commerce Committee on Capitol Hill. I was doing foreign military sales of weapons. So I thought, I know my way around federal government. You kind of get hoity-toity when you work with feds versus state. You think you know everything. Later, I got schooled on that, not knowing all the state stuff. But that was an appealing offer to get back home. It changed when I got there, but it certainly was exciting to get there. And
So by the way,
and keep in mind, when I went, so you picked me up in a BMW. So that's Malcolm's car. We're going to Fleischman Hill, the top 3 PR firm in America. I'm thinking these guys are cash laden. This is great. I thought they had the product really because I was kind of the assumption that the product was there. So I'll let that segue into something else in the future.
yeah. So by the way, there's a little picture of Mal Sherman. He was the guy we hired right around the same time as Tuttle. He was our head of sales, and we could do a whole episode on Mal. He was the right-hand man of famous TV pitchman Ron Popeil. And so Mal came on board to run our sales, and he was always, fake it till you make it was kind of Malcolm. So I think we were trying to impress Steve too much. But speaking of Steve, here, look at this. Here's some of the early guys. Who we got in this picture, Steve?
So if you on the far left is Ray Rivera. He was moonlighting as an IT guy for us at the time, and he'd show up in his little Toyota late at night and work till 1, 2 in the morning. There's Rick, of course, and in between myself and you is Nick Wold. He was director of engineering. And we were all directors at this time. So Rick was director of strategic operations.
We would call it corporate strategy.
Corporate strategies.
Yeah, here, I'll pull up our business cards.
you.
Check that out.
And I was director of government affairs, and we had Mal. Mal was not in that picture. In fact, I can't find a picture of all 5 of us in a picture because we were short on film, we were short on cash, and we didn't have time really taking photos.
So those are the 5 founding team members.
Those are for the first 6 employees. Ray eventually joined us as director of IT.
Here, let me show you a couple more. This was me and my brother. So Tom was running our operations. So everything from setting up how to pay payroll taxes and figuring out how to rent office space. And then, of course, that's my dad in the middle. We milked him dry with this. He was the source of funding to get us up and running.
Go back to that other picture, the first one you just showed.
Which one of the 4 guys?
The 4 guys.
Let me bring that back up.
Just
Okay.
and what year was this?
That's Vegas right there.
That would have been 94.
That's our first trade show in Vegas.
Well, was that during the
That's
Army Surplus Dealer Show?
I just want to point out back in 1994, Rick was fashion forward with his double-breasted suit jacket, and I believe he's wearing jeans. And if we scroll down, I'm sure he's going to have some interesting footwear. And we could do a whole episode
Yes.
on Rick's fashion.
In fact, I think this was the booth we had at the ASD show. Now, again, we're launching a new revolutionary weapon at like a $250 price point in 1990. This would have been 94. And the first show we ever went to was the Army Surplus Dealer Show, which is exactly what it sounds like. These guys are selling used crap and like leftover Army stuff. And so most things like cost $1 or $2. And then there we are trying to launch a $250 new consumer product. And that show was rough because that show ran from like
9 to 5. And we had
I thought it was 8 to 6.
It was 8 to 6. And on top of that, we didn't have the money to afford padding in the carpet. So you had this thin layer of carpet, and we would call them trade show feet. You stand all day, 5 days, you are dying while you're standing there. Every hour was painful.
Yes, it was. And Malcolm, our consummate sales leader, he would always show up in his suit, pressed to the nines. He's got kind of the stereotypical salesman's jewelry. He's got the pinky ring. And look, Steve and I are like, mid-20s. It's Vegas. Every night we went out drinking. I think the earliest we got home was like 5 a.m. And then we would drag our ass into the booth, and there would be Malcolm looking at us with that sense of like a disappointed parent.
Disdain as well. And yet he knew. And yet he knew that was a great way to blow off gas too, because I think this is worth pointing out. When we started really working a lot, we were working late hours. And then when we got to Vegas the first night, we were like, okay, we got to break the booth down. Here we go. Now what? And we're all looking around like, we have no laptops back then. There are no cell phones. There's nothing to make back in the shop. Wait, we have this whole night ahead of us? And that's when Mal said, you always go out for a nice dinner, which was where that photo was taken at. Mm-hmm. We went to get sushi at the Hilton. And next thing you know, what's after that? And it just rolled into blowing off a lot of gas.
Sake at dinner. Next thing you know, going out sounds like a great idea again, even though it probably wasn't.
No.
And boom, out we would go.
So those early days. So when the first 5, 6, 7, talk a little bit about the startup culture. I mean, this company, Rick has talked about this many times before. Now Axon is, I don't know, probably approaching 5,000 employees. Like it all started there, and that's a very different. We try to keep a startup culture here, but that's a very different culture when you're trying to get a company off the ground.
It is very different. And when you work in DC back then, you are used to putting in a lot of hours. You'd work weekends if you're on Capitol Hill because you're doing stuff that works over the weekend sometimes. So the hours were nothing hard for me. The hard part was showing up at 5:30 in the morning, and I showed up my first week in a double-breasted suit and a briefcase, standards fare for Capitol Hill and my stuff in the embassy. And these guys would stroll in flip-flops, shorts, and T-shirt about 8:30. I'd have been there pretty early because that was my normal hours in
Mm-hmm.
DC. And I'd leave at 7, and I'm thinking, hey, I put in a long day, 13 hours. And like, yeah, we know. And they're kind of nodding their head. And that took place for a couple of weeks. And then one day I said, you guys know I'm working a lot of hours. I'm not just leaving early. They're like, yeah, we know. So they said, you want to stick around and see what we do? And I'm like, sure. Well, I didn't know at that point that's when you were working on the cartridges. So we went back in the garage and we would make cartridges. And the first job I got was putting the probe and attaching the wire to it, which is like threading a needle at the back of the probe, pushing it through. There's a little hole in each side. And you tie a knot, kind of like a fisherman, and you pull it back. That was brutal. And I foobarred so many of those cartridges. If you didn't put it in right, the thing would eject out. And those working till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm not going to be here at 5:30. And I kind of got in that T-shirt short mentality.
A little walk down memory lane. Check this out, Steve. This was our first ever office. The one, actually, right, we'll highlight it there in the middle. 7307 East Evans. I think it was a total of like 1,500 square feet. And that's where Steve and we would all come to work. And I've got a little treasure for you guys. This has never been shown before. But in 1994, 2 of my friends, actually 3 of them, came to visit. And they made a video of our office space and me giving them a tour and, in fact, showing how we made cartridges.
And is this, before you played a video, which we have not seen, Rick likes to throw, put surprises in this podcast, obviously. Are these your friends from college? If you remember episode 1, they were calling it the Shocky Shocky gun. Are these the guys who were making fun of you for going down the path that you were going down?
Yep. That's who these guys are. All right, let's go ahead and there we go. 7307. Let's start it up.
Speechless? Are you speechless?
That's Emil Michael, number 2 at Uber of Uber fame.
A non-working. This is the reason why we need air tasers.
Because it's broken.
Well, here's our life testing station where we test our pulse coils.
This is an air taser.
Here they are making fun of me when I step out of the room.
Here's the
So that's a mill there.
Yep.
Pretend to attack.
Okay. He's incapacitated. Oh, jeez. What are you? Don't break anything. Here are the secret battle plans for the air taser. No one has seen these plans except us. We have to be very quiet. I'm not sure if we're allowed to record.
These guys thought I'd
This
lost
is
my
how the
mind.
air taser actually works. You can see here is an electromagnetic pulse system that shoots out 20 aphids, known as Jedi Masters, which will allow the police to target and track air tasers used by criminals. And finally, This is a Romulus circuit that allows Klingons to go invisible in Star Trek movies. I don't really know what that's doing in the air taser development field. But he too can fulfill the American dream by selling shoddy products like Mr. Popeil's at late night to customers directly.
Come on out back. Let me show you guys we'll hook up a unit to the
All right.
that was our
Show
office.
you
Why this is fun.
Okay.
It's the whole thing right there.
We're going into secret headquarters of Pat Smith
Yeah, I'll just get
Incorporated Air Taser.
Now,
Part of history right
this
now.
is one of our.
No one has seen this
I'm not going to load up. I'm not going to load one up and actually shoot it with you guys because Remember that these, takes Steve?
Oh,
Those about are the 20 minutes to handmade hand load each one. cartridges. Frankly, you guys just are a bunch of schlocks right now.
here at Air Taser.
Taping the darts on.
This
This
video
video
procedure.
better never show up anywhere.
This highly delicate procedure has been copyrighted as proprietary process.
Okay, here we go.
Wow.
Oh, that's
Much better in the dark, actually.
Oh, wow.
tape connection.
And then we come back, and then.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is all
I
the
got
stuff
more
from
and more
Jack's
involved in
garage.
that
We just
stuff.
ported it up to our office.
I was doing like the drawings on the computer, just in Corona.
You know, we've got. You can see the gas cylinders there that we were prototyping.
And then
There's just shit everywhere. It's Max. That's the.
It was like, you know, well, how do
Oh
you
God,
get
the
gas into something?
waveform measuring machinery
So
there.
our first gas capsule,
And while I'm talking, of course, he's making fun of me in the background.
and we, the ones that went back to the beer
That's
back
Mark
to the
McKay.
we took a bicycle tire valve and we,
These guys thought I'd lost my mind.
and we welded the valve. Started calling up just. First thing I didn't know is how do these things really work, like stun guns. So I started calling professors at universities who study like electrical muscular stimulation for crippled people. I figured it's pretty similar.
That's amazing.
And yeah, I mean that gives you an idea. Everybody I knew thought like this was the dumbest idea, and they just
Well, we heard,
crucified me.
and we heard in episode 1, Rick talking about this, how everyone thought he was, all his friends are up in Silicon Valley. They're working for big tech companies. They're doing like interesting tech things as during the internet boom. He's down in Arizona making the Shocky shotgun. What did your friends and
Well, hold
family
on a
think?
second. I want to show you some of the high quality early marketing
Yeah.
that we had developed together. I don't know why anybody would have thought this was anything less than a super high quality
Whoa, 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 whoa.
device.
Go back to the first one.
Thank you for showing this, because this is what was sent to me. That's
This is how we recruited
This is
Steve.
how I was recruited. They sent this, and you had them laminated. Remember that? And you put it in a 3-ring binder. You sent videos, but this stuff right there is the stuff of
Crazy.
legend.
I mean, Tuttle, you might be crazy. So you had a good job. You talked to this guy for an hour on the phone that you've never met. He sends you the material, and this is some of the material that they send you?
Well, no. On top of that, keep in mind, I also had to talk to Phil for almost 2 hours. One of the hardest. That was the hardest interview I've ever done in my life, and he intrigued me enough to where I thought this thing has legs, that this should work really well. And I got those materials, and this was pretty high tech at the time. Believe it or not, it was all you sent this to me laminated.
If you laminate it, it's professional.
And
That's
look at your logo. You did that logo.
I did,
Yeah.
that logo is
I
pretty,
did all the
You
artwork.
did all the artwork, exactly. So I thought you'd appreciate when I found those. I'm like, oh, this is the stuff of legend that turned into the aphids, that turned into how I was able to do my job to get this marketed to law enforcement and accepted by consumers to keep it trackable.
I did not know that AFID that it stood for anti-felon identification.
Yeah.
That's where it came from. Yeah, and this was our idea of early on getting ahead and self-regulating. You know, the gun industry, frankly, had resisted any efforts to serialize ammunition, but we decided in our case to just go ahead and do it. And not only to serialize the cartridges, but also to put these confetti tags into the cartridges so it'd spray all over the scene. If you ever committed a crime, you're leaving your serial number behind. And this, I think, was very helpful in self-regulating so that we could avoid states, you know, coming out and banning us.
So for government affairs, it's great because now you've gone on the offense, if you will, and I don't have to worry about defending the product. I'm already putting out a strange product, but when you start throwing these positives, you've already put the walls up. Like, hey, we've already done our due diligence. So it was an ingenious idea.
All right, here's another one. Remember this day, Steve?
I took that picture. And if you recall, you would not let me get hit with a taser. That is at your parents' house. That is on a freezing, with our own t-shirts, it was freezing cold. If you remember that
Well,
window,
for Arizona, yeah.
which was unusual for that time of year. And I had some friends out from DC. We were there for that. And those were all our first human hits with Jack over there.
Yep. So we've got, I think, some call outs there.
Yeah.
There's me and Tom, Ray Rivera, Steve Wolfel, who is our early manufacturing lead, and Nick Wold, we stole him away from Silicon Graphics was where he's working for. He came to lead our engineering.
So is there somebody that's recognized as the person who took the first official hit?
That was my brother Tom. In fact, there he is right after his hit. Let's see. I think we've got a video of it here. Let's try this.
You could see that he couldn't move. He didn't want to move. We're going to have another subject coming up in just a few moments.
That's Malcolm.
All right. Great.
Jack's in the upper right. There I am behind Rick.
I asked the company's president, Patrick Smith, what would happen
I
if
love
someone
this
was
one.
standing in water. Well, let's go see what he has to say about that. Patrick, you're standing in water in a baby pool. Aren't you going to be electrocuted if you're tasered?
That's a very common question, and that's the whole point of this exercise, to show that water does not affect how the taser works. There's no electrocution or anything like that. It's really jamming the nervous system, and the water won't affect that. So we'll see that in a couple of minutes here.
Well, this is going to be real interesting. Let's stand back and see what happens.
Love the soundtrack, eh?
Yeah, but watch that timer.
This was a long 30 seconds. There's Jack pointing out where the wires are going. Oh, get out of the shot, Jack. I had a little rubber ducky in there with me. Thought, it'd be kind of tongue in cheek.
You don't know this, but I had a laughing attack right about here.
Really?
I did, yeah. And that's when I get nervous.
I'm trying not to have a laughing attack because I don't want to laugh over him grunting. This is pure gold right
Well,
here.
it wasn't the reaction we expected. Totally different from
Well, yeah,
Tom's.
my brother passed out. I think he was so amped up. So Tom went first. I went second.
Yeah, I remember. I never went out.
I hadn't even watched this all the way through and get ready for today. Should I leave it up?
Oh, yeah.
The other one's on the ground.
I remember everything you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom just blacked out. Didn't remember a thing.
Oh, wait. Here it comes.
All right. See, you're shaking. All right. You all there? Yeah. You home?
Yeah. Ooh.
Do you remember going down?
Yeah, I remember everything. Wish I didn't. No, it didn't hurt. It's how to put it? Really bad cramp. Charlie was all in through the upper part of the body, but I was there for that one. The whole time I didn't black out.
It looked like you were trying to get up. Were you trying to get up, or?
Yeah, I did after the first one. After I went down.
All right, we're going to go ahead and press on.
So you were.
It was an Excedrin kind of thing, you said. That's what you just missed.
So were you? That's 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Well, I took a 30-second hit.
You took a 30-second.
Yeah,
hit.
and
whole
then that
thing
was the timer. That included the recovery afterward and all that. So
Oh, a 30-second hit is
there's no joke. Although I do have to tell you, that was the early underpowered tasers. The tough guys were able to fight through it. And so what we also proved there is I'm not a particularly tough guy.
Right, and
The pain was enough to put me on the ground.
and today is 5 seconds that you can recharge.
But
so
it is a stronger hit.
stronger hit. And maybe if you haven't watched the first episode, maybe both of you are taser experts. Maybe just take a few seconds to describe how the taser actually works for those who don't know.
You want to take this one, Steve?
Sure. So the way I describe it is that 2 probes are deployed on the older legacy models, and they stick to your body, and that allows you to create a circuit of positive, negative electricity to flow through the body. Now they're coming in pulses per second, and each pulse is causing a contraction. If I speed it up to say 18, 22 pulses per second, it looks like a smooth lockup, but actually that person's vibrating and contracting 18 to 20 times per second, and you can't get any controlled movements during that time. To me, it feels like a TENS unit for like my PT that I've done on steroids.
And
You know what, actually? Let's have Steve tell us again. But let's have Steve from 1994 tell us how the taser works.
Yeah.
Here we go. By the way, you'll love this. I had gotten some 3D rendering software. Again, this is early 90s. And so I made the video, and I think you'll recognize the voice talent here.
This is the Air Taser Intelligent Self-Defense System.
That's Tuttle's
When
voice
fired,
over voice.
the blast doors on the front of the Air Taser are blown off, and 2 probes are launched out up to 15 feet. These probes are attached by fine wire back to the Air Taser. Once they attach to the body or clothing of an attacker, These probes conduct an electrical impulse called a taser wave, or T-wave, from the air taser into the body of the target. These T-waves overpower the nervous system and brain of the target, incapacitating him.
I like how old Steve explains this. This is good, right, Steve?
Much like static on a telephone line, these T-waves block communication between the brain and the muscle, temporarily impairing the target's ability to control his body.
We should go back making videos like that. That's a cool video.
It was fun. And do you remember when in the studio we did that? I had to get a deeper voice, so, and I had to like do it all these different breaks and keep coming back to that same voice. And like, no, you're not low enough. And you did the graphics and you couldn't get the foot to show. Remember that how the foot kind of got hidden for a split second?
His foot kept pushing through the plane, and we didn't have time to figure out that.
Well,
yeah.
Rick is still creating logos and videos to this day for lots of things that we do within the company. And for this podcast, that is Rick made the video for the podcast using AI. So to this day, continue to use your creative talents.
We did music on a video. Remember that? You were the keyboards and I was the drums.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So in the early days, so now when you know how a taser works, two probes come out. It's got to be 12 inches apart, and it causes neuromuscular incapacitation. We call it NMI. Like, I imagine those early days, just like Rick was trying to show from the kiddie pool with his little ducky in there, that you're not electrocuting people. Was that the common misconception in the beginning?
Yeah, at trade shows they were saying, won't this electrocute you, cause a heart attack? What if you're wet? You'll get electrocuted. What if you defecate? I mean, we got the strangest questions. But getting all those questions at trade shows knew we had to answer in advance. And that's one of the reasons we had them in the pool.
And to this day, and I'm taking a ride, everyone who lines up for, we call it a voluntary exposure, they go to the bathroom first because they think some reason you're going to pee in your pants. Mm-hmm. But there's a reason you don't pee in your pants. It's because
it doesn't affect that system.
But also, you're locked up.
You're locked up, but it doesn't affect the bladder and anything like that. Now, people will do it afterwards from fear. And that happens in policing when they get handcuffed sometimes. Just you'll have it happen in back of a squad car from handcuffs. So that's only when it happens when it's with fear. But
we stimulate the motor neurons that control conscious movement, but the autonomous nervous system uses kind of a different sort of stimulation frequency. So we don't actually hit, like breathing, you can breathe fine, sort of the subconscious sort of activities we don't really affect. I want to bring back, let's go back a little further down memory lane. What's going on here, Steve?
That is Phoenix College. That is where we have an NBC reporter from KPNX local, was a famous guy from having like done pepper spray demos. He crashed a car and let an airbag hit him. And he would talk about this as an investigative reporter. So we tracked him down to take a hit from the taser from a former private detective psychologist named Barbara St. John there in the middle. And we wanted to get publicity of hitting somebody. And that was Steve Filmer. And that's right before we did that.
This would have been December 94, late November, early December.
November, probably.
Let's go. I think we've got the tape here.
This taser weapon. This is air tasers.
There's Steve
Two
Filmer.
probes shoot out at 150 feet per second. They've got barbed ends like fish hooks to snag skin or clothing. With them, a jolt of juice. What's it like to be an attacker on the business end of an air taser?
Slide this on your finger.
Phoenix firefighters check me out, and they'll be right here if anything goes wrong. Safety glasses and a mask protect my eyes and face.
We were
if the
so
probe
nervous.
hits me in the torso, it'll have to go through a thick horsehide jacket. Barbara's got the air taser. I'll rush her from 20 yards.
Stop or I'll fire!
Watch his hand. He's going to grab the dirt and get dirt under his nails.
After 2 jolts, we stop. A real attacker would get more.
How you feeling?
That was not pleasant. Those 9 seconds were devastating.
We could
but
all
I'm
do this by memory.
Chest pain.
That was a hell of a shot to this day with a suspect running at you.
Well, on top of that, he's wearing a freaking leather jacket, which scared the hell out of us.
Yeah.
Oh, there was just... I just felt out of control.
Hold on, here, we're going to go back to the studio. We were so convinced that this was going to, like, the world was going to be lit on fire.
Before this happened.
The deal was they had to put up our phone number if we
exactly
gave
the
them the
same.
It's
exclusive.
really hard. I can't be specific about where the pain was. The pain almost seemed to be like nowhere and everywhere at the same time. And, I mean, I just felt out of control.
If we slow it all down, you'll see the probes hit. One in my side, the other in the leg.
I mean, that is...
Along with the pain, my muscles tense up. I'm not in control of my movements. This weapon works. I'm Steve Filmer, 12 News, Arizona's news station.
Well, these air tasers are being made by a company here in Scottsdale. The price is $250. Now, you may wonder what happens if the bad guys get this weapon. Next week, Steve Filmer will follow up on that and some other issues surrounding the new air taser. Meantime, if you have some questions about this air taser, you can call our Easy Source number. That is 861-9400.
All right. So I got to tell you this. So we were so convinced that we were going to light the world on fire that we arranged to borrow a call center from Insight, which is one of these big computer resellers. They had a call center with like hundreds of seats. And so we took every employee, me, Tuttle, like everybody we knew was down manning the phones. We probably had like 30 people down there, which was, I think the company only had 10 or 11 people at the time. And so we're sitting there and we're all watching on the news. We're all super excited. And, we're waiting for the phone to start ringing. And they put the phone number up and nothing happens. And we're like, oh shit. And we're sitting there and we're like, well, I don't know, maybe everybody wrote it down. It's taken them a few minutes. A minute goes by. 2 minutes go by. And then finally the phone rings. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to answer the first phone call. And I pick it up and it's my mom. She says, Ricky, how many calls have you had?
No.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, Mom, you're the only one. Oh. That's when I realized maybe this was going to be a little more of an uphill battle than we thought.
So this is 94. All of this, which you've been showing us, is 94. And right now you're thinking consumer business.
Yep. We had built it. This was really intended to be a consumer product for people like my mom who may want to defend herself, but not go out and have to get a gun. And by the way, you also heard them calling me Pat and Patrick in there. That's a little confusing. Throughout my life, my legal name is Patrick. And at different stages, I've gone by Pat, Patrick, or Rick. And actually, on most of my college friends, when you heard them on the tape, they would call me Pat. That was what I went by in college.
Huh.
And then, frankly, after the first year, I was going through a bit of depression at how hard this was going to be, and felt like I had been such a workaholic. I'd become an uninteresting workaholic person. And so I actually sort of rebranded myself, went back to Rick after the first year, like, okay, I need to hit the reset button.
Wow.
It worked.
So 94, you're thinking consumer business. You've gotten 10, 11, 12 employees at this point. You guys are masters at marketing, like just watching these videos and things, the sort of guerrilla marketing, the logos, everything, like super cool. And
I think you're being a little facetious.
No,
I was actually proud. This was the best picture we ever took back in the day.
Dude, that is the best picture we ever took. And that's got a point of pride for me on that one. Go ahead.
No, I'm not being facetious at all.
No, I think you're...
Like that, the Air Taser logo that is over the office, your very first office, which is probably not too far from here, down here in the volcano lair. Like that is, we should do some T-shirts with that Air Taser logo. It'd sell like crazy. It is.
It's crazy. I think, Rick, you don't get enough credit for that logo and some of the stuff that you did. I thought it was amazing at the time because go back to that picture. That is a high-res killer photo for 1994.
Mm-hmm.
That could be done in seconds today. So you're editing this. You and I were working on this, and we were getting the smoke for that picture, trying to get the light to bounce off right.
I think with Rod Key down at R&R Studio.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So at R&R, they couldn't get the laser to show through the smoke, but we took photos of it in smoke, and you inlaid that. So how long did that take you to do some editing on that file?
Quite a while.
And then when you hit save, you'd say, I'm pushing my luck. When you hit save, it would render for how long?
Yeah, this was early days with computers. Yeah.
You know what that picture is? It's 5 megabytes. And that would take hours to render. Yeah, so you were a little more ahead of time. You should get yourself some credit on that one.
Here's some of my favorite photos from the photo shoot that we had done. That we had this female She ended up looking quite a bit like Marcia Clark, the attorney from the OJ files. That's what everybody would tell us about. It was pretty wild. I did the packaging. Remember this? Our 4-color box was so proud of that. Again, largely because we couldn't afford to pay advertising for him, so we put together most of our own stuff.
You're a scrappy startup.
Yes,
Beyond scrappy. And that's where the grit came in, and that's where you make. I always said we did the work of 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like braggadocio, but dude, you were doing like the work of 4. And your brother and Nick and all those guys were just working so hard. And that's how you got scrappy. You made do with what you had. We didn't have a lot of money.
Ricky made this point before. Like, you do, in some ways, miss those old days where it was just, you guys were just grinding it out, doing it yourself.
Oh, yeah. It was fun. Looking back, it's more fun looking back because it all worked.
Yeah.
Had we failed, which it looked for a couple of years like we're going to, well, I think we still would have enjoyed the life experience.
Yeah. So,
well, speaking of, I got to show you.
Oh, this is the best one.
Oh, it is. Have you seen this?
I've seen this one.
Oh. This was our first big budget marketing film.
Let's prepare ourselves for this one. This one had me rolling when I saw this one.
All right. So we hired a professional pair of actors. We borrowed my mom's Mercedes for this. We've got a professional film crew. Well, whoops, wait, hold on, come back here. Let me get this to play. We've got real dialogue.
This is already the best birthday I've ever had.
Just wait till you see the inside of this club.
Should we hit an ATM first?
There's no need. I've got plenty of cash.
Got plenty of cash.
Hey, real glad to hear about that cash. Now I'll try to keep this from getting unpleasant.
Back off, mister. And I mean right now.
I ain't afraid of you. Come on!
I won't warn you again. Don't be stupid.
I ain't scared of you.
Now, Mike, you had the chutzpah to tell me you thought that this was what kind of movie when you first saw it?
Well, I mean, with that music in the beginning, the haircuts, I thought it was the beginning of a porn, like a 80s, early 90s. I mean, not that I've seen those. I'm just saying, it looks like the beginning of a porn.
Hell out of here. I know this line, but I haven't seen this in so long.
So were you guys on the set for this?
Oh yeah, we're in the back alleys of Phoenix downtown.
That is a work of art. That is, I can't believe I just saw this over the weekend. I've never seen it before, but that is a work of art right there.
And you had to milk that for all it's worth because we did put a lot of money in there, and you played at trade shows on loops. So that's why we all know I can mouth the words to this day. The Steve Filmer videos.
Don't be stupid.
Don't be stupid.
I'm not going to warn you again. And these things were perfect. Like they just solidified in your brain.
I got plenty of cash.
This was just that was a lot of fun back then.
Did you guys write the script or did you have someone?
There was no chat GPT back then.
There was no chat GPT. I'm just
I think Mal probably.
Mal did most of that.
I mean, I did have a question like, why is he driving a convertible Mercedes with a beautiful woman down this back alleyway in some urban environment? Like, and he's touting that he has a lot of cash.
Don't you challenge the realism of our marketing video.
Yeah.
That could have been any man.
So
right
up to this point, is this your biggest spend on sort of marketing the Air Taser at the time?
Oh
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then that led into here's a great scene. This is from the Consumer Electronics Show. We went with kind of a James Bond theme. This was actually, I think, our second CES. We came
96.
back with a shoulder holster. Yeah, in 90.
And you've got all three of the products. So you got the Air Taser on the far left. You've got the Sports Defender, and then we have the Air Taser Laser Sight. Those
Wow, the Sports Defender. That was our first one in yellow. Is that right?
That's right. And we sort of copied a yellow theme from Sony Walkmans back in the day because it sort of implied they were waterproof. We put it in a fanny pack so that you could have it while jogging. We had an extra cartridge, beefed up to the price, and Sharper Image sold that as well. And that yellow, we just got our patent on that yellow or trademark on that yellow about a year and a half ago.
Yep.
So it's served us well. And so we had gray and yellow initially as our first two colors.
Well, if you've ever been to CES, the booths are ridiculous. They're huge. There's these multi-million-dollar booths. And then there's ours. Like we've got like the cheesy wedding curtain thing in the background. We had a 10-foot booth. But hey, we got some attention, like, on the Las Vegas Review Journal. That was the year I think we launched our laser sight. I think it was in year 2 because we didn't have that initially. and it made for great press. In fact, we even had our own clothing, Steve. Good to see. I actually have a couple of these still hanging in my closet.
Of course he does. And he probably wears them on occasion too.
I do. In fact, wait, let me show you. So in addition to CES, there's another big show, and this is the big gun show in January, and it's the SHOT Show.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the challenge with the SHOT Show back in the day is they took this perspective. They said, well, look, we don't want to deal with the controversy around guns, so you can't market anything that's for use against a human. So it was kind of this shtick where it was, well, guns are for hunting animals. And you walk around the SHOT Show and look, there's like AK-47s and all kinds of stuff that's clearly not for hunting. But those were the rules. And so originally they said we couldn't display at the show because ours was ours had no recreational purpose. And so for that, we invented the bear taser. And that was our ticket into the SHOT Show. So we remember the old Buffalo gun.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a mock-up of what a bear taser would look like. It never actually went into production.
Didn't work. Right.
Well, we never actually made it. It was a conceptual prototype. It looked a little bit like the thing from Ghostbusters where we had a little fanny pack that was going to hold the extra batteries, and you had a cord that came out and attached to the air taser. But that was enough to get us into the SHOT Show.
I don't think, two things I just learned from those two shows. One, that's where our yellow came from, like to this day. Like, and as you said, I think we got the patent on Axon yellow
about a year and a half ago,
which you have it on your, so everything we do today is black and yellow. I didn't realize that's where it came from, Sony. And then I've never heard mention of the bear taser. That's the first time I've heard or seen anything. That is super cool.
Only on the Boldly Go podcast. We dig that deep.
We had to do so much to keep afloat. Ideas would keep popping out of Malcolm's head, Rick's head, all the other different heads, and you're swinging for the fence. You're fighting for your lives here. I think that's the one thing that probably needs to come across those first 4 years is that you're out of money. And what do? And you're this close to thinking you're going to make it. You get Steve Filmer, you become the CES hit. So you're like that greyhound that's getting really close to the rabbit, but you're not there. So you're just not executing. So you have to find ways to get very creative.
Mm-hmm. And just like, again, to go back, unlike all the internet startups of the day, like you guys weren't raising cash from venture funds and banks weren't knocking at your door to give you money. You were raising money from friends and family. Is that right, Rick?
Yeah, we had, let me actually show you. I will show you our funding source. So that was my dad. He was our first source of funding. And then along with him, he convinced Bruce Culver, who was one of his friends who'd gone off and been a successful entrepreneur. And between the two of them, we were bleeding them dry. And so the reason we were constantly out of money is we never raised more than we needed for the next 30 days because I felt so guilty. Let's see, here's actually from a poker tournament we had hosted at one point with my dad and Bruce there. And it was always embarrassing and kind of shameful to have to go back with our hand out like, hey, we're going to need more money next month. We were bouncing around about $2 million a year in sales, and we never were able to kind of break free. My dad called it the Walking Dead. There was enough sales that you wouldn't shut it down. It's like, okay, there's hope. But we were losing money every month, and we had to keep going back and asking for them, to give us some more funding just to keep us afloat.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one, not being there, but one, I mean, I know why you guys kept going because I say this about both of you all the time. I've said it about Rick 1,000 times to people, and it certainly applies to you, Tuttle. Both of you are two of the most optimistic people and energetic people I've ever met. So you got to have that going for you in those early days, or you're really just going month to month, and you're borrowing money from your dad and Bruce, like you believe and you're optimistic that you're just about to make it.
You're there, but you're not. It's his family's money. I knew the parents really well. I knew your grandfather, Dupa. I just bring back good memories. I knew Bruce Culver very well. Get to know his wife, and we put some of our own little money here and there. To tell you a story where I had to cut part of the payroll with Discover Card check one time. That was scary. But you were fighting for them because they weren't getting.
Wait. You to make payroll, you used your Discover Card.
Well, it would only cover a portion. But one day, Tom came up to me. He's like, "Hey, you get those Discover Card checks in the mail, don't you?" I'm like, "Sure." Right? Like, bring one in tomorrow. I'm like, "Okay." So I brought it in. He's like, "Hey, how do you feel about maxing it out? What do you got on there? I'm like, $15,000 limit. He's like, we'll cut a check to TASER. It'll help with the payroll, and we'll pay you back in time. I'm like, and that was at one point I thought, oh my God, the Smith family is Rochambeauing me. I am getting taken to the cleaners. And I'm like, wait, I go, I don't have the 21% interest to cover that if it doesn't go through.
Right.
And you don't have the money for the payroll, like for all of it. He's, I just $15,000. So I paid it. And every day I'd bother your brother, and he's like, it's not in yet. The line, this money didn't come in. And then I'll never forget the day it was due. I came in early, and Tom showed up. He's like, dude, it's not here yet. It'll come in. And all of a sudden, about 2:30, Tuttle, go down to Sears, and you could pay your Discover card at Sears that day it's due and not pay that interest payment. So that's where that is a pucker factor like you wouldn't believe. So you're all in. He's never down. I'm pretty optimistic, but
You're very optimistic.
Delusional. We were delusional.
I think we were, but if you go back, when was the could you remember a time? I remember one phrase where I saw you down and you left the office. Never saw you down after that. Tell me a time you were really noticeably down.
What was the time you remember?
It was when our products were failing left and right on RMAs, and we had I think it was a high voltage coil issue, and you said, it's not something I'm going to swallow a bullet over. And I never heard that phrase before, and it just sounded like, wow, you're taking this one pretty seriously. And the next thing you know, you kind of looked a little bit discouraged. You got in your little Mitsubishi and drove away. And that was the only time I've ever seen you down in my entire life.
Wow. Well, let's come back to the launch when we first started getting sales. So that we talked about the Army Surplus Dealer Show, and it seemed like a total waste of time because there was a bunch of guys, like they weren't a fit for our product. But down the aisle comes the prince of consumer electronics, Richard Thalheimer, the founder and CEO of the Sharper Image. And we believe he actually went out to the ASD show. We'd sent him a letter that we'd be displaying there, and he beelined right up to our booth. And he ended up being our launch partner. So that for a while we had a 2-page spread in the Sharper Image. This guy was like consumer royalty, like consumer electronics royalty back in the day. And I think the only reason they launched with us is because it was founder-led. Like most big businesses wouldn't touch us. There's this weird electric gun. They think about liability. Is it too aggressive? But Thalheimer was a believer. He said, hey, this is a different approach to gun violence and how people could protect themselves. So he put his name behind it. And for a number of years, they were our biggest customer. Now it still wasn't a monster success, but they even gave us room in the stores we built these acrylic displays. Remember those, Steve?
I do.
Those are so cool. And when does it launch? What year are we?
This is 95. January 95 is when we launched in the Sharper Image.
And look, and Steve, in case you don't remember from episode 1, which I'm sure you've committed it to memory. The reason I keep asking for dates, and as we walk through this, is we're writing a book, right, Rick?
That's right.
Through these episodes. So we'll go through the history as we did in episode 1 of the inspiration behind TASER, how TASER started. Here in episode 4, we're going through sort of those early days, and then ultimately we'll continue on, and then we'll put a book together. Right?
Yeah, but I remember these damn acrylic displays. These things were fragile. We'd ship them out. Half of them would break.
Or scratch.
And then we'd have to go set them up. So Steve and I were personally going, and Tom, we all would go out to Sharper Image stores. And I remember going through South Florida. They had like 6 stores. And I would go store to store, be scheduled to go in, set this up. You get the staff together, do a quick training on how this works, shoot a couple, TASER cartridges, and then on to the next store.
I remember Sharper Image from airplanes, the back of the.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's how I would. That's what the first thing that grabbed me. That's how I knew Sharper Image was being on airplanes and flipping through the magazine.
Yeah, and if you go back to that POP display, it was a live interactive one. You pushed a button, and the electricity went down this tubular insulated wires would connect, and you could see that little target at the very back would light up, and it made this. You'd hear all the pulses for that 30-second, right, or where you just push a button and hold it down. But we had brochures on the far right-hand side. It was really clever. That was a pain. I did all the California stores and Beverly Hills. They'd be all scratched up. You had to bring scratch cleaner. It was a lot of work.
Well, how about this story, Mr. Tuttle?
Okay, so if you remember that front office picture, I had the very front desk. It looked like I was a receptionist. And so the main line actually came to me, the 1-800-97-TASER. Still works today. And I got a phone call, and it was the Atlanta SWAT team. They said, hey, I'd like to buy some TASERtron units. That was the original company that Jack had sold off. And I said, well, we're not TASERtron. but we make something better. What are you looking for? He's like, I need 16 or 17 units. And I said, well, we can put it in a paddle holster. You can wear it in your belt. It's way smaller. It's got an automatic timer to it. It's got a built-in, and it's got a laser sight now. He's like, well, this is way better. And we talk. 20 minutes later, he sends an order over, like on the fax. And I'm like, this is going to be a breeze of a job. We're going to be selling these things like hotcakes, right? And I think that was a Thursday. On Monday, I get a knock at the door, and it's kind of like getting a knock at McDonald's door. Like, why wouldn't somebody just walk in? Like, why are they knocking? So I open the door, and the guy goes, are you Steve and Dennis Tuttle? And I said, I sure am. And he goes, you have been served. And it was a big envelope, and Jack Cover came out, and he's like, let's see here. No, those aren't worth the paper they're written on. And then you came out and said, Jack, did you sign a non-compete clause? And from there.
Yeah. All right. So a little bit of history here. So when I first met Jack Cover, I was 23 and he was 73. And he had started this company twice before. Once in the 70s, it went out of business. They restarted it in the 80s, went out of business again. And the company at that point was named Tasertron. And it had been purchased by one of his investors, a guy named Barry Resnick. Now, as it turns out, Barry was a prominent litigator in Southern California. And the business was very small. I think it was doing a few $100,000 a year in total sales. And if I remember correctly, I think Barry's son and one other person worked there, extremely small. But it was owned by a litigator. And Jack had given them something I didn't know. He had given them exclusive rights to the core Taser patent. And so when that knock came at the door, we were like, hey, what's going on here? And I think Jack was under the impression, because there's the original Taser patent, then there was a new one on the compressed air system that we would use for the air Taser. And I think Jack was under the impression, well, since they didn't use the new patent, I'm not obligated by the restrictions on the old one, which I later learned was not the case, because Barry sued us, claiming he had exclusive rights to the Taser for North American law enforcement.
Wait, so one is compressed air and the other's gunpowder. Is essentially the two differences.
Correct. But they both used the original Taser patents. And so we were both licensees. Jack owned the patents, and he'd licensed them to both of us. He'd given them an exclusive and us an unrestricted patent. So that was the problem. And now, look, by then, we went out and we talked to our lawyers. We hired lawyers for the first time. And they said, oh, you guys are totally clean. Like, there's no restrictions in your patent license, so no problem. You don't have to abide by this. And so we told, Barry and Tasertron to pound sand. Well, then I got my first $20,000 bill. And 1 month into it, things started to fall apart in our relationship with Jack over this.
$20,000 bill for what?
Lawyers. The first legal bill I got was $20,000. And this was when I was making $36,000 a year. That was like more than half a year of pay for me just in the first legal bill. And because I think things started going a little bit sideways. I think Jack got a lawyer that sort of pointed out, this was going to be a problem for him because he had signed 2 agreements that were incompatible. And so Jack ended up supporting Tasertron's lawsuit against us, saying that he and I had an oral agreement outside of the written agreement, which was really frustrating because then our lawyers were like, oh, well, this is going to be much harder than we thought because there's this oral agreement. And I was like, what? Anyways, we said, we didn't start this business to sell to police anyway. So, and this patent that's in question expires in 98. It's already 94. It was 95 by that point. So it's only 3 years away. And so we said, look, it's easier to just settle this thing. And so we agreed that we would settle the lawsuit with Tasertron. And we agreed that we wouldn't sell to police until the patent expired.
In 98.
In 98, which it turned out was a godsend. Because had we started selling the Tasers to police, they would have failed because they were underpowered. And I didn't know that yet. But had we gone out and started selling to police, we would have gotten egg all over our face and probably never recovered. So Barry actually did us the biggest favor I could imagine by keeping us out of policing.
But Jack's in your office. You were just showing pictures. Like, is he working in the Air Taser office or no?
He'd show up. He was more like a consultant at the time. He'd throw in his advice here and there, and he was there less and less over the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Jack was there. And then once this blew up,
that was it.
And he got kind of frustrated. And I was frustrated. And the product was not selling very well by that point. And so we were all like, you know, it was not a very happy place.
Right.
We were losing money. We've got this lawsuit. And so that's about the time that Jack quit. What was interesting, though, was we settled with Tasertron, but things had gotten so emotional with Jack, he refused to settle. So Jack's lawsuit with us stayed open for like another year or two, which was just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, when you say settle like you're not going to sell into law enforcement until 1998 or
right.
settle in
Right. I
terms
mean,
of,
that's all they were suing for, was like that we would respect their agreement.
I mean,
which we did.
Because you were excited to get a call from Atlanta PD. You thought this was probably it.
Oh my God. And the fact that I actually sold something that quick and easy, like it was not that way with the consumers. It took multiple visits to a store for someone to buy it. Here was just one phone call showing him all the differences and then emailing him some stuff. And he's like, oh, this is great. I'll take it.
Do you know how, at that time about how many law enforcement agencies across the U.S. are using Tasertron products?
At one point, I had 500. Your mom brought in a tape of Tasertrons. They would throw up all their names of the agencies that used it. So I took note. I had your mom come in and she wrote down every agency, and I think it came out to like 150 on there. And as I discovered more, there were about 500 that I was able to track down that actually bought Tasertrons. One unit to say 20.
Right.
Not that many.
Not a huge business.
No.
No. But, you know, it kept us afloat. The consumer business, I mean, just sort of barely. Again, to wrap that up, though, with Jack, the thing that was really interesting there, that gotten so emotional. It was sort of like a divorce, you know, where just people get a little bit irrational. And Jack was really upset. He wanted me to admit that I had lied and that, you know, and look, I said, Jack, no, you like, in fact, early on, he had pitched me to do a police baton with a taser in it. And I said, no, we got to focus on just doing one thing. But anyways, it took us another 2 years to settle that. And actually got so emotional. I remember one of the weirdest things, were you there in the settlement? We had Joel Shapiro was our lawyer. And I was in with Jack and his lawyer. And then there was a moment where Jack got really frustrated and called his lawyer kind of a very derogatory name. I'm not going to repeat it. And then his lawyer got up and quit, says, I'm done. And I'm sitting there, we're trying to settle this thing. And I remember going, holy shit. So I went in the other room. Never had anything like this in my career. I went to meet by myself with his lawyer. And I put my arm around him. I'm like, Gary, I know you're frustrated. I'm frustrated. We got to just get this done. This lawsuit's been dragging on. I need you to come back in with me, and we're going to get this done together. So I'm like psychologically counseling Jack's lawyer to get him to come back in the room so we could settle the thing, which we ultimately did. We ended up at that point just buying everything from Jack. It was like $200,000 or $100,000, which was a ton of money. I had to go beg for it from Bruce Culver because my dad was already running dry at that point. But with that, we were able to buy the Taser patents, the trademark, kind of get everything cleaned up. And Jack at that point, you know, he was 77 or so, and he just kind of wanted out. All right. So I guess the one other thing I would share was in those early days was our international, oops, let me get our faces off there for a second. What kept the company afloat was international sales. We had a very hard time. Consumer in the U.S. was just sort of bouncing around 1 to 2 million a year. But Malcolm was brilliant at convincing people internationally that there was big money to be had in the Taser business. And so Mal would sell individual countries on exclusive deals. Now, to get the exclusive, you had to place a pretty big order up front. And so Mal would, frankly, kind of make up the order. Steve, remember how he would look up the orders when people call in from different countries?
I wish I had a clickety-clack keyboard here, but someone would say, wow, well, let's see, let me look at my computer.
No.
And he would clack, 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 clack. No, clack, clack. I can get that as low as, 5,000 units to start with. And then it was just crazy.
No computer in front of
No, there was a keyboard
sitting. Just smash the keyboard. Just make it sound like you're typing a keyboard.
Get out of
Literally just clack, 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 clack. He's looking around the room.
Yeah, he would hit just keys or he'd hit next to it. And look, this got to be sort of a running joke because Mal was always trying to make things seem bigger than they were, right? And so he'd know that we'd peek around the corner because he'd put on a little bit of a show. As he'd be like, let me look it up in the computer. Taiwan? Oh boy, that's 7,000 units. But if you buy today, I'll do it for 5,000. And we laugh about it, but look, we were desperate for cash, and Malcolm single-handedly kept the company alive. Now, we never felt great about those because he would sell. So if it was 5,000 units, he'd say, look, you got to take 2,000 up front, and the rest you have to order in the course of the year, or you lose the exclusive. And we'd ship them 2,000 units. And we knew we'd never see another order. And like clockwork, those people would come back later and be like, hey, we want to return these. And what would Mal say about returning?
Can't return them, but oh my God, what was it?
This isn't a library we're running
that's
here.
That's right. Good one.
All sales are final.
This is not a library.
This is not a library. We don't take them back.
But those were big blips of orders that would come in and save the bacon. Like, you're literally maxing that out and then run it dry.
And are you selling the air taser? Is that what you're selling?
That was all we had was the air taser. And again, Mal was such a character. It was sad when we went into law enforcement because we just knew his personality wouldn't jibe. He was just too much of a showman. You know, sometimes we would get a little carried away. But he kept us alive. Like, the company would not have survived without Malcolm Sherman out there hunting for people in the international markets that were so excited about this that they'd place a big order to get a countrywide exclusive. And then 6 months later, they'd miss their second order, and Mal would have to go sell the company or sell that country again.
Amazing.
And he also was the trade show master. We were babes in the woods when it came to the trade show. He was like, this is what you do. I go back to Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know how many times you and I have done a pitch at a trade show on how the taser works, what it does, all the wacky questions, thousands. ASD, you're getting that all over. And I remember standing my first trade show, and Malcolm's like, what are you doing there? I'm like, I'm waiting for somebody to come in the booth. He's like, no, get that guy in the booth and, sell it to him. I'm like, he doesn't want it. He didn't want to come in the booth. He's like, that's where you practice your pitch. You hone your craft here. And that made all the sense in the world later.
Yep.
At the time, you're like, this is a pain in the tail. Like, I got to pitch this guy that doesn't want to hear my pitch. But you realize your pitch stunk. And you'd go back and self-critique yourself, and you got better and better and better. So he was awesome.
Yeah, or you'd step out in the hallway and just grab people and bring them in. Almost like a carnival barker. It was like
vaudeville canes pulling you in.
Yeah. No chairs allowed in the booth. He's like, booth ain't for sitting.
Yep.
Booth's for working.
Hey, that's good advice.
And go to a trade show today. You go to IACP, and you will still see people, and they're on their phones, but they're just sitting there. There's no incentive to go in that booth.
I was just going to say the chairs alone, like, you don't put a chair in a booth because you don't sit down.
I set the chairs up in the first booth, and I came back. He said, hey, go dump this trash. I came back, where'd the chairs go? And that's when he told me no chairs.
So International is saving the business right now. Are you making any money from Sharper Image and consumer in the U.S.?
I mean, money is coming in, but the expenses going out was more than the money coming in. And so every month we were losing $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. And that's why we had to keep going back to the well to raise more money.
And by then, I assume your manufacturing, however you define that, had advanced a little bit more, or are you guys still in the back winding the wires around the cartridges?
We were not doing it ourselves, but it was being done by hand. Actually, this is a great story. When we were looking to hire manufacturing folks, like Scottsdale, Arizona is a little more of like a retirement or a high-end golf community. And so like finding manufacturing workers can be tricky. But Steve's dad was a minister. So
yeah, he's an Episcopal minister, and growing up, we'd have a lot of Mexican migrants in our house that were legal. And he was part of an ecumenical group of all the different Christian churches around, Methodists and Presbyterians and Catholics. And they would get them all together trying to find these legit immigrants jobs. So my dad would have these people come over during interviews. And so when Rick said, do you know anybody we could find? I said, well, let me see if my dad's still working with that group. They were. And I called them up, and they said, we're going to send you a bunch of Europeans. And I thought, yeah, right. This is not a melting pot city. Like, I grew up here, I'm a native. And I said, I assume you mean it'll be mostly people from Mexico. Like, no, Europeans. I'm like, okay. First knock at the door, we get these names like Milan, Dragon, and all these guys that I thought were Czechoslovakian or Russian, but it turned out they were Bosnians, Serbians, and Croatians that were refugee status, which is great for immigration. Like, they're the gold standard, right? If you can hire them, you're not going to have any problems with immigration or INS. So we hired the first few, and then we were like, are there more of you? And it became family members. We had one, Milan. Dragon is his brother, his dad, Boro. it was like a family atmosphere back there of all these different Serbians and Bosnians.
Yeah, to this day, you don't have to learn English. If you come to work at Axon, we've got all of our procedures in English and Serbian. It's been just a phenomenal relationship for us and the community. And look, a lot of these folks, they've just been through hell. Their country's torn apart with a war, and a lot of them, were middle-aged folks who it's hard enough adjusting to a new country. So having something familiar, and they could work with people they knew, and they didn't have to learn a new language to get by. To this day, I mean, I think we've had almost 3 generations now where we've had people's kids come in, and
I think one of the most meaningful things I've seen recently at Axon was you did something very special for everybody working in manufacturing last Christmas, and I didn't know the story. But you were watching folks come up on stage, and Rick was presenting them with something that had been with the company for 20, 25, 30 years. It was, and then husband and wife, and like you said, different generations. I mean, it was, one, moving, but two, just an incredible story of how they got to Axon, or TASER at the time.
It's very moving. When you gave that last guy, I don't know how many years he'd been on, but they tend not to quit, or if they do, they go on to learn a better job and go somewhere else. And those, I just ran into one doing a tour. I've known her over 20 some odd years. I think it's Mira. And they're like legend to me. But when I would do all these tours, and I would do a lot of television shows back in the manufacturing line, I got to know a lot of them well. Then I would see them working in hotels, at restaurants that weekend. It was an incredible find that we had.
All right, so you're selling to the international market.
Yep. Well, and then comes a fateful call from Prague. The Czech National Police wanted to buy some tasers. They'd seen it in the sharper image. And I remember we got all excited because we're like, yeah, like, if only we could sell to police in the U.S., but we can't. But we can sell outside of the U.S. This patent agreement doesn't apply. And so Malcolm and I ended up going to Prague. Did you go on that first trip? Okay. And so we fly to Prague. We have a local distributor that meets us, and we go in to do a demonstration. And now this is like the late 90s. This is 96. This would have been around the holiday season, 96. And I'd never presented to cops before. Cops were kind of skeptical. But these are like Eastern European cops. These guys had been behind the Iron Curtain. And so this was a very cold, hard group of guys looking at me. And I'm up there, hey, let me tell you about the air taser, and here's how it works, and 2 probes, and it jams your nervous system. And they were looking at me pretty skeptically. So at the end of my presentation, they say, okay, good, we do volunteer now. Okay, so they bring up a volunteer. And I'd shot volunteers before, but something different happened this time. They went up, and the sergeant grabbed this young cadet by the collar, and was yelling in his face. I don't know what he said, but it was clearly pretty motivational. And I think he basically was saying, you better not fall down. And so, I come in and I shoot that first volunteer, and his eyes get really big, and he runs up and he grabs me. And now all these, cold, stoic looking, Eastern European cops start roaring with laughter. They think this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. And I, of course, am humiliated. I'm like, what in the hell just happened? And so they say, okay, Mr. Smith, what happened? You don't go down. I'm like, I don't know. It might be something, maybe there's something wrong with that weapon. So, okay, you try again. So I get another weapon out. Now I'm getting nervous. I'm sweating bullets. And I shoot the same kid again. Same thing happens. Nothing. So they're looking at me. And they're not letting me off the hook. And I'm like, well, maybe there's something wrong with the volunteer. Like maybe he has a different tolerance for electricity. Yeah. And look, I'm just making shit up. I'm like, I don't know. And they say, okay, well, you get another volunteer. And so they bring another guy up. And now, I shoot him, same thing. He runs up and grabs me. And, okay, Mr. Smith, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know. And we keep going. And I'm just like, please, God, let it stop. I just let it stop. But they keep bringing up volunteers. In this, I think I shot 6 or 7 guys, and not one of them went down. And I went out of there feeling like the biggest snake oil salesman in the history of the world. And I remember calling my dad, and I was like, I don't know, like, we got to shut this down. Like, we're selling snake oil. And Malcolm and I went out, and we got blindingly drunk that night. And we debated about shutting the business down, because I tell you, that was probably the darkest moment. But we came back to the U.S., and I started calling around to some of the police experts on tasers. And one of them was a guy named Captain Greg Meyer out of LAPD. He had done his master's degree on a study on tasers and had found them to be very useful and actually save a lot of injuries at LAPD. And I described to him what had happened. And he said, oh, well, yeah. Like, look, like all non-lethal weapons rely on pain, like pepper spray. It doesn't stop people when they're truly motivated. People can fight through it. But he said, you know, at LAPD, Jack had made a special higher-powered version of the taser that wasn't perfect but worked better. Anyway, and he sent me a video of, there were a number of self-defense groups that had made videos of people getting pepper sprayed, and people could fight right through the effects of the pepper spray and keep going. So at least I was like, okay, I guess I'm part of a snake oil industry. It's not just me, like nobody's shit works. So at least, you know, we're no worse than everybody else. But I kept thinking about that buffalo, and I was like, stop that damn buffalo. And that was not pain. And look, my undergraduate degree was in neurobiology, so I'd studied enough of this stuff to know that you can paralyze people with electricity. I just came to believe, you know what? Jack and the team early on, when they developed the taser, they never really spent much time on tuning the bio effect. They did some calculations. They tested on a couple volunteers, none of whom were motivated. And like me, I fell down. Steve Filmer fell down. I think it's because we were scared and it hurt and it was weird. Like, but you get somebody who's really focused or on PCP or meth, like they would fight right through it. So we came back and we said, well, we got to figure out if we can fix this thing pretty quick. And so Jack had introduced me to a guy named Dr. Robert Stratbucker. You remember Strat?
Very well. We were good friends.
Yeah, tell us about Strat.
So Strat is a doctor that I work with that at that time had just come off as the oldest tactical surgeon for the U.S. Air Force during Operation Desert Shield. And I had known him through Jack saying Dr. Stratberger is an expert on the electrical waveforms. I think he was a nuclear engineer or something like that. He had engineering degrees. He had a MD. He had a clinic back in Omaha. He had an asparagus farm. He a jack of all trades. One of the nicest guys I've ever worked with and super friendly, but he really knew electricity. In fact, one day we were monkeying around with some capacitors and you charge them up and throw them at people. And your brother threw one at me and I caught it. And it burned my hand pretty good. And he's like, well, that was pretty good, you know? And he's like, whoa, don't do the 388. You know, that's a big capacitor. Like you could hurt somebody with that. And like he knew looking at capacitors, what was safe and what wasn't. So he was very attuned to the electrical side, done a lot of studies for TASER over the years, not ours, but prior to that.
Well, he was the only guy I'd see published a study. He had done a stun gun study in the 80s. Yeah. And because he was one of the only guys who'd done any studies, we called him up. And again, his luck would have, this guy was kind of a Renaissance man. Later down the road, you know, some of our critics would make fun of him because he was a farmer. But yeah, the guy lived on a farm, had been in his family for generations. They were an asparagus farming family and pigs. And that really worked out well because I called him up and I said, hey man, I just had this terrible situation in Prague. Like, we've got to go back and we've got to do some testing. We've got to do a sensitivity analysis to figure out what do we need to do to make this thing work better. And so he and I on a phone call said, basically, we'll tell you what, I'll have Nick Wold, our engineer, build a test rig where we can basically just add more batteries, more capacitors, change the windings of the transformer. We came up with like 10 different things we would test. And then Strat said, okay, great. Well, if we're going to do this, you guys don't really have much money, so we'll do it at my farm. I've got a veterinarian that can come down and you know, I've got one of my pigs and I'll charge you $2,500. And that one test, $2,500 and one pig,
saved the company.
Saved the company because we were able to come in and we knocked the pig out with anesthesia, so it didn't feel any pain because we weren't worried about whether we could cause pain. We wanted to cause muscle contractions. And I remember when we hit it with the original air taser, you know, that pig was knocked out with surgical anesthesia.
Right.
And it would sort of shiver when it was hit with the air taser. And then once we started cranking up, you know, the different settings, we could take it from shivering to these massive contractions. You could just see this pig was flexing as hard as it could. And we thought, that's it. Like, that's what we have to do. Like, but we also realized, you know what? It's 2 more years until we can sell to police. And consumers don't test it this way. They're never going to know. So we got to do something to last the next 2 years. So we knew we had the secret sauce, but we had to survive the next 2 years. And that meant we had to find something we could sell that would give us some revenue. And I'm going to save that for the next episode because we've been going for a while. I think we're going to wrap up. This is the Air TASER era. And it ended on this hopeful note that we knew how to save the tech, but we'd have to survive another 2 years.
And it involved a pig farmer / asparagus farmer. Well, Tuttle, thank you for being here for episode 4. And I know you'll be here for, as we continue to have this conversation, for episode 5.
And we're going to end episode 4 with a little experiment.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It's not even done yet. It is to be done between now and when we publish. We're going to take a transcript of this episode, and we're going to have AI write us a little song about the TASER early days. And we will conclude this episode dropping the mic and go into a little song about the struggles in the early days of TASER. And with that, we'll see you all for the next episode.